Shameful, dirty, lived on the floor fabric. Welcome to the post-Christmas mess. Everything is disorganized. Everything is just sort of put wherever I can put it in order to conserve space and have everything be easier to reach. So, I clearly need to do something about this to just feel like I've got my life back under control. For anyone who's not in my Discord, I have ADHD, but one of my symptoms is not being clutterblind. In fact, I am the exact opposite of clutterblind, so this is actually pretty overwhelming for me to even, like, look at. I have many boxes that I will be adding to my stash of boxes that lives on either of these shelves, because clearly, as you can see from my collection of, these are full of fabric. These aren't empty. I don't really know what I have, so these are going to contain more things, and then my old ugly, those cube organizers that you can buy from Walmart, they're gonna live in the corner of shame behind the speaker over there. I don't particularly need to go through and get rid of stuff like you may assume when someone goes through and organizes stuff, because I moved in April. I actually moved the exact weekend that everything went into lockdown. But I do just have a fair amount of stuff that needs organized, and new stuff that's come in, like books and my Dremel, that just needs a home, and things that need to make their way back where they actually live. I genuinely thought that I had cleaned my stuff out really well, but as it turns out, no matter how well you think you have cleaned out your sewing room, there is always more mystery sewing stuff that you end up finding. Discovering fabrics that I do not recall purchasing. Polyester brocade. I don't recall why I bought this, or what I intended to use it for. I spent about 45 minutes messing around with where I could put the boxes that would be the most advantageous to plan out where they might go, but I don't think any of them actually ended up back in the place where I had originally decided that I was going to put them. So if you're planning on cleaning and organizing your space, be aware that that probably happens if you try and overplan. Alright, I think we have a slight plan of where I can keep and put everything. Kind of. Haven't decided on that empty shelf yet, but we have a little bit going on. Now it is time to fill these boxes with my pile of mystery fabrics, which I'm gonna have to burn some of these because I don't know what they are. Like, obviously this is a polyester satin, which I regret buying, but I've got, like, this guy, which isn't satin. No, never mind. There was one fabric in here that, like, it's not satin, and it's not a broadcloth, but I don't know what it is, so I'm gonna sort these. I'm sure by now regulars on this channel are well aware of my crippling addiction to black clothing, and I had so much, like, random black fabric that I ended up having to sort it into, like, 2 different boxes, and in the end I think I ended up sorting them, like, right to left inside the boxes even, with like fabric that was softer on the right and fabric that was less soft and more stiff on the left, or some stupid organizational system like that doesn't actually make any sense but still makes you feel like you got something accomplished. I also realized that I had like a significant amount of that black coating fabric from my swing coat left, so I think I might do something fun with it, like a can I cape it challenge, and see if I can get enough cape pieces to fit on it that it actually ends up with a real wearable capelet or something. I also found a whole lot of UFOs in with all of my stuff. Most of them were circle skirts for some reason, and for some reason they just hadn't made it into my pile of UFOs in my bedroom, because on a shelving unit in there is usually where they live. Why do I have so many circle skirts that are just unfinished? I mean, this is enormous because it was going to be a double circle skirt. If I remember correctly, I couldn't get the bodice on this to work the way that I wanted it to, so I just gave up on it. The good thing about not being a binge buyer is that your stash tends to grow a little bit more organically, and you don't end up bursting out of the seams of your hypothetical stash bag all that often. The bad news is when your stuff grows organically, you forget where you put a lot of things. So now, after several years, all of my buttons are finally in the same place, and all of my embroidery floss and embroidery ribbon for when I do ribbon embroidery is all in the same place, which has never happened because you just tend to end up with things all over because you sort it by project or you sort it by object, and then nothing ends up in the same place twice. But now, hopefully, things will be really manageable and easy to continue to stash when I do end up stashing, and easy to find when I want to work on projects, because I now have a drawer dedicated specifically to buttons, and buttons living nowhere else in my room. And I no longer have any drawers filled with blue food coloring because my cake decorating stuff was all in that one bin, because I bought my cake decorating stuff before I had moved out of the house and thus didn't have a kitchen. Yes, I know how to decorate cakes. No, I'm not terribly good at it. I went through a very brief moment of cake decorating excitement before I moved on to cookies, which is still my primary baking passion. I like cooking nothing else. The top drawer of that little unit is now buttons. The next one down is embellishments, so things like seed beads and sequins. Below that is all of my ribbon that isn't designated for embroidery, and below that is adhesives like E6000 and my glue gun. I now have a lace bin and a tapes bin because it doesn't make sense anymore for me to just have a corset things box because I have too many corset things. My cotton shelf is still my cotton shelf, but that empty shelf below it now holds all of my sewing books, like my copy of Harper's Bazaar from 1902 and my quilting magazines because I'm a 26-year-old, 80-year-old, and my copy of Stays and Corsets, Designed for the Modern Body. This 3-drawer organizer that sits by my sewing machine is always kind of a hot mess. It's mostly thread, and now it is only thread and bobbins and needles on the top, because I have now extracted my buttons and other random miscellaneous crap that was just hanging in there. It's easy to grab when I'm at my sewing machine, so I like to keep... It just gathers a lot of stuff. In the cube organizers live my scrap collection. I have it sorted into like reasonably sized scraps and things like fat quarters and remnants, and unreasonably sized scraps, so like littler ones that aren't potentially aren't that useful, but that I still might get some use out of someday, like as a pocket lining or something, I don't know. The little guys are tea tins from Trader Joe's that now hold my scissors and my marking pens and my tape measures, and the little guy, or the big guy, is actually a tin that a pair of clippers came in that I stole from my boss. I also stole the tea tins. Those I nabbed as the tea ran out at the shop where I used to work. 9 gajillion years later, everything is back in a place that makes some amount of sense, and that I'm a lot more happy with, and I'm not completely overwhelmed by the clutter in my sewing space anymore, so it's a lot more fun for me to work on projects. Most of my little decorative boxes are filled with fabric, but not all of them. One of them is specifically filled with my fiance's stuff. Some of them specifically have corset corpses from ones that didn't work out as I was making them. One of them specifically has only black polyester. One of them has specifically only black cotton. One of them holds a bunch of hardware, one of them holds lace, one of them now holds boning because it's outgrown my little cup. One of them holds patterns. And one of them just sort of holds miscellaneous fabrics. While I was doing stuff, I also put my little batty garland thing and zip-tied it to the curtain rod that they're on. My curtains have a separate curtain rod, but it used to be every time I opened and shut the curtains, I would just disturb that and it would have a high risk of just taking down that whole garland. So now I can open and shut my curtains, which, I mean, my jade plant is already dead, but my dead jade plant lives up there with the tripods, but hey, now I won't kill future jade plants. Sorry, Millie. For content from me that is absolutely nothing like this, you can hit that subscribe button down below. Maybe click the notification bell to actually be notified because the subscribe button doesn't do that anymore. Or you can join my Discord. There's also a link down below to my Discord server, which is specifically a place for queer and gender non-conforming artists, particularly if they're interested in history and historical costuming.